Hey PC World fans, Adam here with Gordon. And unlike desktop CPUs, it's really hard to compare laptop CPUs from generation to generation because of the changes in the design of the laptop itself. Correct, Gordon?
Yes, and not even that, but sometimes, it's very hard to compare a 17-inch MSI laptop versus, say, a 14-inch Dell laptop, because even though it might have the same CPU model, the laptop wrapped around it will make a difference in the performance of it.
Okay, but you have a treat. You've been able to look at 3 generations of Intel CPUs, 10th gen, 11th gen, and 12th gen, all in this laptop right here. Gordon, tell me about this laptop.
Yeah, it's very rare you see the same shell used with 3 generations, but we have just crossed that line. This is MSI's GE76 Raider 17.3-inch gaming laptop. Inside this one in front of you is Intel's current 12th gen Core i9 12900HK with the GeForce RTX 3080 Ti, 175 watt TGP, and DDR5. This same shell was used for the 11th gen and the 10th gen. So that lets us make more accurate assessments of the CPU performance because it's generally the same laptop design.
Okay, well, tell me about the performance. Is it a big jump from 10th to 11 to 11th to 12?
Yeah, so we're going to kick off here with Cinebench R20. This is a 3D rendering benchmark. More cores, more threads are better. One thing I do want to point out, because you see 12th gen, you see 12th gen Core i9, you see 11th gen Core i9. But that 10th gen GE76 Raider was using a 10th gen Core i7.
Well, that doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't seem fair. It was an 8-core CPU. But what I will say is, having tested many 10th gen Intel laptop CPUs, is the Core i9 really didn't get you that much. It was almost like a name, in name only, because remember the 10th gen Intel laptop CPU was based on an older 14 nanometer design. It just was out of gas, and going from an i7 to an i9 wasn't generally worth it. And yes, you will get a little more performance out of the i9 version of the 10th gen, but we're talking single digits, less than single digits. So
okay, so keep that in mind.
Keep that in mind. Okay. I know it's not an i9. You say, well, if I had a Core i9, actually, no, it doesn't make that much of a difference. So.
Okay, well, what kind of difference does it make then?
Well, I will say, if you can see these charts, bigger bars are better, and we are looking at 14-core 12th gen versus 8-core 11th gen and 8-core 10th gen. The CPU designs made a big difference. 12th gen versus 11th gen, you're looking at a very, very spectacular 34.4% increase in performance in Cinebench. And against that much, much weaker 10th gen 8-core CPU, you're looking at an 85.3% increase in performance, going from a laptop from just 2 years ago.
That is a big jump.
Yeah, that is pretty spectacular, and 12th gen is no joke. One thing also I should mention, they are almost the same laptops, but the original 10th gen had a 280 watt power brick. This one and the 11th gen had a 330 watt. They do use more power. Both the 11th gen and 12th gen laptops did use more power.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know where that fits in, but just want to put that out there.
Okay. Well, what about single threaded? Because you would think there's not going to be that big of a difference, especially in the chassis. That's allowing a lot of cooling.
Yeah, no, generally single-threaded is harder to get more gains out of. This next chart is Cinebench R20 using a single thread or a single core, as a lot of people might want to say. And, 11th gen was pretty good, but 12th gen and the newer cores, you're seeing 17.6% increase in performance, which is very sizable when you're looking at single-threaded performance. And when you're looking at the 10th gen, it's really, really big at 58.4%. So single-threaded performance might tell you how well Photoshop, browsing, a lot of Office tasks, a lot of light-duty things will run. So it sort of indicates, it's a good indicator of like the snappiness of a laptop. So generally, this just tells you that the 12th gen GE76 will just be significantly snappier than an older 10th gen laptop.
Do you think the i9 version on the 10th gen would have made a difference here?
Yeah, so it probably would have helped it a little bit, because Well, i9 with 10th gen didn't really get you much in multi-core performance because it just was too hot. It just was out of gas. Single-threaded got you a little bit more, but again, it was always kind of disappointing what you got out of 10th gen, out of i9. It just really could not push it, especially in laptops. You're very, very you're very thermally limited. It just never made much sense with the i9 in that generation.
Okay, all right. Well, what else?
Next up is Geekbench. Geekbench is a very popular benchmark. You can go download for free. Warning, it will upload the results to the internet. Unlike Cinebench, which was simply a 3D rendering benchmark that does one single task on all the cores, Geekbench rolls up maybe a couple dozen different tasks, using them on all the cores and multi-core as well as single core performance. So again, we're getting very decent performance. Look at this multi-core performance, 12th gen versus 11th gen, 35.3% increase in performance. Very sizable. 11th gen was very good, and 10th gen not as good. Because look, you're looking at multi-core performance from 12th gen to 10th gen of 49%.
Wow.
So the extra cores and the better design and the more efficient process is just adding up to all kinds of goodness in Geekbench. Of course, single core matters too, right? So we're going to look at single core. Remember, again, just like before we were running on all the cores, most things that people do on their laptop, you are not going to use all the cores. We wish it would. We're not there yet. Single core performance, again, might indicate how fast it is in photo editing, browsing, document editing, a lot of lighter duty tasks, text compression, that kind of stuff. So it is generally harder to get more performance out of single core. But 12th gen versus 11th gen is doing really well, 19.6%. So that is again nothing to laugh at. That is something you will definitely feel. 19% is going to feel slightly crisper than that 11th gen.
Yeah.
And if you're going all the way back to a 2-year-old GE76, you're looking at 47% more performance from the GE76 Raider with the 12th gen versus the GE76 with a 10th gen in it. So 47% is pretty huge. And again, it's just going to feel snappier. And we're not comparing 14 cores versus 8 cores. That disparity is not there. This is simply one core versus the other core. So if you're looking at that, 47% is nice.
That's a difference.
That is a big difference.
All right, well, what else you got?
Our last CPU-based test is Handbrake. So this is where we take an older version of Handbrake, take a 30 gigabyte file, and we transcode it using the Android tablet preset. It is all CPU-based. You can do video encoding on the GPU, or you can do it on the CPU because it looks better. Most people will say less time is better. It does like more cores. There are other things that add up as well. But 14 core 12th gen versus that 8 core 11th gen, 38.9%. That's basically 39% faster than that 11th gen. Pretty damn decent. And when I mean faster, I mean it will take 39% less time. And against the 8 core 10th gen, pretty close. It didn't, 11th gen to 10th gen in this particular test didn't make a huge difference. You will finish your encode 40.6% faster than that 10th gen with a 12th gen CPU.
Interesting. And the GPU doesn't play any role in here?
The GPU does not in this particular test. You
Okay.
can do that with newer versions. We are just only looking at the CPU, but we do actually have some GPU comparisons.
Oh, okay, good.
I do want to point out that there are differences in the GPUs slightly. Both of the 3080 laptop GPUs were 165 TGP for the 11th gen and 155 for the 10th gen.
Okay.
But 155 versus 165, not a huge difference. Same thing goes 175 versus 165. It's not a huge difference in thermals and cooling. But what probably does help this newest GE76 is that it is a GeForce RTX 3080 Ti. So the Ti basically gives you 20% more of everything. 20% more ray tracing cores, 20% more tensor cores, 20% more CUDA cores.
But with only 10 watts higher TGP.
With only 10 watts higher, so you're still very limited with thermals. And the first thing is 3D Mark Time Spy. This is UL's popular benchmark for graphics. It is a synthetic test. We are only going to look at the graphics subscore. That is not considering the CPU at all. You could put a lousy, I don't know, 5th gen CPU in here. It's not going to make as much of a difference. This is a pure graphics test in this mode.
Okay.
As you can see, the 155 to the 165 TGP 3080s are dead even. And I'm going to say 3080 Ti, not exactly blown away by it, because you're looking at basically 3 to 4% faster than the non-Ti version. It's probably a combination of this test, the thermal limits overall on the laptop, and you need a heavier graphics load to sort of push the card a little harder to sort of see that 20% of the Ti come out. It might also be an indicator like, you know what, maybe this ain't such a big deal, right? Entirely possible. And you might also think that after seeing the next one, but actually, which is Metro Exodus. So we're going to look at Metro Exodus. We're running this at 1080p. We are not running it with ray tracing because that's how we run our standard laptop benchmarks for reviews. We are using the extreme preset at 1080p, and you can see not a huge deal here either. It is basically 7% faster than the Tiger Lake and maybe 3.3% faster than the 10th gen. So, 7 to 4% is not a big deal. And also, I would say that's a good way to misrepresent numbers because 7.7% sounds like a lot, but 56% to 52% is not a huge difference in change in frames. So I would say, I don't really care. Again, I think it might be different if we ran this game differently, but this is the way we ran it. I do want to point out if you use something like 3D Mark Port Royal, which is a ray tracing benchmark built into it, you start to see things help. Like this is 3D Mark, again, synthetic test. It is all graphics, so we are only testing the GPU against that Tiger Lake laptop, 10.8%, against the 10th gen laptop, 11%. Basically, those laptops are dead even because, hey, no joke, 3080 laptop GPU, almost the same thermals. You're going to get the same ray tracing score. But, you're getting a very decent 11% more performance from the Ti version. You would think, well, maybe I should get more because there's 20% more ray tracing cores, but that's not how it always works out in the end. But 11% double-digit increase in performance is nothing to scoff at. The next thing is something a little lighter. So this is Rise of the Tomb Raider. It's probably about 6 years old now, 7 years, running it at 1080p, very high setting in DX11 mode. It sort of gives you an idea of like how an older game would run. That's, better graphically, but certainly not the newest thing, not with all the bells and whistles. And in this particular test, you may actually start to see the CPU make more of a difference because we are less GPU limited in this. If you run Shadows of the Tomb Raider, which is the newest whiz-bang thing, it's going to be closer than this. This is definitely seeing more of the CPU impact on the game. And for Rise of the Tomb Raider, we are looking at 14% over the 11th gen 3080. And we're looking at 20% over that 10th gen. You're seeing the increased disparity basically because the 12th gen CPU, as we've seen on the desktop, is definitely the number one gaming CPU you can get most of the time. In most games, it's really just, it's out there. And against 11th gen and 10th gen, it's making a difference as well as, of course, that 3080 Ti. So if you're looking at 14 to 20% increase in performance older the previous generation laptops, I'm not going to quibble with that. This last gaming benchmark is Counter-Strike Global Operations, 1080p, and this is a very lightweight game. It's what they would call esports. You can play this on integrated graphics. You're not going to play it well, but it will play. On a big and powerful gaming laptop, you are going to be getting hundreds of frames a second. And you can see the one at the top is, again, the 12th gen with Alder Lake, 12th gen, and with that 3080 Ti, 509 frames a second. That is 8.3% faster over that 11th gen with that 3080 because, again, this is the GPU is making less of an impact in this test, in this game. It's really about the CPU performance. A lot of it. a lot of it is very much about the CPU. So that's why we're seeing that uplift there. And you can especially see it. Look, remember what you saw previously where the 3080s, both 3080 non-TI laptops were virtually the same in a lot of the graphically intense tests. But you're seeing that, look, the 11th gen is much faster than the 10th gen, and the 12th gen over that 10th gen is just a huge difference. You're looking at 33% more frames a second. 8.3% over the 11th gen, but 33% higher frames over that 10th gen is pretty spectacular. And most of that is probably due to the better CPU. It's just simply faster.
Okay, wow. Any other tests?
Last one, although I don't think it's that relevant, people are going to want to know battery life. For that, we basically run a local video. We loop it until the battery dies with earbuds plugged in, as well as airplane mode. And the screens are all set to the same brightness, about 250 to 260 nits. We go till it dies, and you can see it's not a big difference. All of the GE76 Raider laptops have had 99.9 watt-hour batteries. Why not 100? Because you cannot bring a 100 watt-hour battery onto an airplane. That is the hard limit to bring a laptop onto a plane.
So it's right up to the edge.
Right up to the edge. 99.9 is what MSI claims. And you can see for video rundown tests, it's pretty easy. You're basically running on the integrated graphics. It's just in cruise control all day. All of the decode is done on the IGP. And every single one of these laptops is basically more than 6 hours of battery life. The 11th gen slightly worse, 10th gen slightly better. One thing that should really be factored in but isn't is the screen in the newer 12th gen is a 4K panel. 4K panels inherently use more power at the same brightness than 1080p screens because you have essentially smaller holes. You have to push more light to get through those smaller holes. So they generally consume more power and they're brighter.
So you're saying it lasted longer than the 11th gen, even on a 4K panel?
Yep, even on the 4K panel. So that is actually very decent. There are other variations that go here, like sometimes the battery may not charge up to the maximum as they save some of the batteries, but you can basically expect greater than 6 hours of video runtime on this, which is not bad at all.
Okay. Yeah.
And with a 4K panel, I would say that's very impressive because I've seen going to a 4K panel eat as much as a third of the battery life.
Wow.
And this is a 4K 120 hertz panel.
Wow.
And you can save some battery life by cranking it down to 60 hertz to view a movie. Most regular people are not going to do that, just going to watch it. The other ones are running at 360 hertz. So those also ate a lot of power, but if you're going to get 6 hours battery life, it's not bad. If you're going to play a game in all of these, really don't expect more than an hour to 2 hours because
of course,
you're driving CPU and GPU that hard on a 100 watt-hour battery. It's just not going to be great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, so now that you've seen all of these tests across these 3 different generations of CPUs, what's the takeaway? If somebody is on something older than 10th gen, which one do you think they should go with? Do you think they should maybe try to save a little money and go with 11th gen, or they swing for the fences and go with 12th gen?
Well, I think if you're looking, so consider everything you've looked at here. The big advantage with 12th gen, it is clearly a better CPU. In gaming, it's still mostly about the GPU. 11th gen, there are a lot of 11th gen laptops out there with 3080s. I think if you're a 90% gamer, and you're going to save quite a chunk of change by going with 11th gen, I think that is a very reasonable decision to make. I don't think you would regret that.
Huh.
So,
okay.
However, if you are a 50% gamer and you're a 50% video editor or 50% 3D rendering artist, and you just simply need the power of 12th gen and 14 cores, then it's probably worth it to go to 12th gen. So if you need CPU as much as you need GPU, definitely go all the way to 12th gen. Right? If you just really want to play games, then honestly, a 3080, which is an awesome GPU with 11th gen to save some money over the newest CPU, is a really, really good decision.
So what about 10th gen? I know that feels maybe kind of weird to upgrade after just 2 generations. Usually laptops get used for longer than that, but what if somebody's on a 10th gen? Actually, my work laptop is on a 10th gen. Do you think it's worth it to go all the way to Alder Lake? Or do you think, you still get a little bit coming out of the 11th gen?
Yeah, if you're if you're in 10th gen, generally the advice is it would be insane to upgrade a laptop from just 2 generations, because you just rarely ever get money. You just don't ever get anything for your money, because that is just too close. Things just don't get that much better in 2 generations. Obviously, from what you're seeing, that's not necessarily true for 10th gen on CPU limited tasks. If you really need high core count, you need better cores, you need CPUs that are just simply faster, just doing browsing, Photoshop, just generally snappier, I would say that you could legitimately make an argument, which is normally I would never say you should do, to upgrade to a 12th gen laptop. If you had the 10th gen GE76 that you literally bought 2 years ago, and you really are a 3D rendering artist, or you do CPU encoding, or there's just things you need the better, more cores of in Alder Lake, 12th gen, you will really get better performance. You will actually get something for upgrading. Now that is very rare. That is very rare, but we are in that place now, because 12th gen Intel CPUs are really that good. And those 10th gen CPUs really weren't that great. They were gassed when they came out, and they look a lot older now when they're compared to 12th gen. So I would say, yes, you could argue to your boss that I need a better 12th gen laptop, and you would really feel the difference on CPU stuff. Looking at the GPU stuff though, if you're a gamer, if you're mostly a gamer, 90% games, and that's all you really care about, I would say no, I would not do it. I would not recommend that you would upgrade from a 3080 to a 3080 Ti, or to go from a 10th gen to a 12th gen. 12th gen, because it's just not worth it. It's just, it's the normal, that's insane talk that everybody in the internet will tell you, and I fully agree with that. But when you're looking at those CPU tasks, you are getting very sizable increases in performance from 10th gen to 12th gen. So you could say, yeah, that's not a bad upgrade. Talk to your boss right now.
There you go. So my last question is, do you think we're going to get an extra treat, and we're going to be able to test 13th gen with the same laptop designer, or do you think it's done here?
I don't know. Sometimes I think they make big investments in machining and design and R&D to do it. I doubt 13th gen will be the same. I feel like it's like an automobile maker. You get about 4 years out of it, then you redesign everything. So I would imagine they're going to go and I suspect we will see a different GE76 Raider. Although if we did see a 13th gen GE76 Raider with a GeForce 4000 series in the same shell, I would actually be very happy, because you could come back here and you could say, well, should I upgrade from my 11th gen GE76 Raider because it's the same chassis? So that would be good for us.
That would be interesting.
For consumers that are looking for something better, because when you redesign, there's always something that I complain about. I don't like the keyboard on this compared to other keyboards. So hey, do the keyboard better, So there's always something that can be improved.
Interesting. Okay. Well, you'll have to come back later to see what happens when the updated G76 Raider gets released with 13th gen, assuming it will. But yeah, no. Thank you for going through these numbers. It's kind of interesting to see kind of a similar chassis have different kind of generations and see the kind of performance that we got out of it. So thank you, Gordon. Thanks everyone for sticking around. If you want more awesome PC hardware and software videos, then please subscribe, and we'll see everybody later. Bye.